Okay, so after a coffee, I think we can turn to the heart of the matter, as going to the economic initiative and projects we are going to talk about today. I'm speaking about the heart of the matter because not only economics play a key role in the starting of the Arab Spring or the different revolutions in the form of the different demands that were raised in the demonstrations all around the different countries, and those include demands for social justice, for kind of employment for the young people and more expectations, and also against corruption of the political and economic elites. But also is the heart of the matter because, I mean, we were speaking in the introduction by Marian Hamsidi how the different attempts of economic reform in the 18s were neither working, and there's a classical article by John Waterbury then already that he was speaking how the public enterprise was the main obstacle for the economic reform in the sense of the political elite that had to reform the public enterprise was the one that was basically co-opting it. So what we have seen is in all these years in which there has been some attempts for different structural reforms in the 18th, and then later other different attempts for economic reform. This kind of alliance between the political and economic elites have not given a space for in general for other sectors of the population to participate in the economy. And we are speaking here about private enterprises or young people, different projects, and this includes the access to finance, how it's very difficult to access credit for families, for small and small enterprises, and also for young people trying to start new projects. So what we are going to see today is different cases from Lebanon to Tunisia and Morocco about startups, different projects about job creation for young people, and also for microfinance projects in Morocco, which are trying to break this situation of this lack of space in the economic sphere, and trying to include these projects and young projects into the framework. So I'm just going to introduce briefly the first speaker is Samir Karam. Is a serial entrepreneur and international angel investor. You'll have to explain us what is an angel, maybe for some of the participants here. He's based in Beirut, in Lebanon. He has invested in North America, Scandinavia, South Asia, and the Middle East, and North Africa. And in 2010, he founded Lebanon's first startup accelerator called Sequence, isn't it? Which went on to create 4 out of 9 successful startups, valued between 2 and 10 million US dollars. He recently has successfully exited his first angel investment, and in 2014 organized Lebanon's first international startup conference that maybe you can tell more about it for us today. And this year has tasked to form an independent, neutral organization called Startup Megaphone, which is going to manage the international image of Lebanon's startup ecosystem. So please, Karam, you have 20 minutes if you want.
Thanks. Hi. I think I may be the only person today who is completely not from a civil society background, completely. I'm what you may call a capitalist in its purest form. We look for opportunities, we invest in them, and we hope to make a massive return on them. Oddly enough, I think that is one of the potential saviors of the Arab world, because I don't know if any of you have read the stats. By 2020, there will be 100 million unemployed young Arab youths. So 100 million unemployed people can be very, very, very powerful as a force, for good or for bad. So where we stand today is, I'm going to tell you a short story about my journey through entrepreneurship in the Arab world. And from that, hopefully, inspire the audience to a certain extent on how we can look at the Arab Spring from a completely different perspective than civil society and politics and revolutions and so on. I believe that there have been revolutions taking place in the Arab world for as far back as we can remember, and most of them are not documented in the media. Not everything involves people on the streets. Sometimes it involves people breaking new ground in terms of creating ecosystems, supporting one another, securing financing, and reaching a global audience. And these are the revolutions. These are the unspoken revolutions that actually affect change in a positive way. So, going back to 2007, 2009, I attempted to create a startup in Lebanon. And if any of you are familiar with 2007, I don't think there was even a startup ecosystem in Spain back then. So I decided I was going to create a global product, online product for the internet from Lebanon, from a little garage in Lebanon, and I was going to do it Silicon Valley style, like Apple, like Facebook, like Google. And so we started working, built a team, created a very cool product, and we got the attention of one of the top 5 VCs in Silicon Valley called Kleiner Perkins. They reached out to us and said, we'd like to interview you for a potential investment. So we got on Skype, and I don't know if you remember, back then the internet in the Arab world was very bad, so the Skype was quite a challenge to be heard and to hear what was going on. And we pitched to one of the managing partners of this VC firm. VC is a big investor. And the VC was so interested that they asked us at the end of the pitch, are you ready to relocate to the valley, to Silicon Valley? And our response was, no, because Lebanon is where my home is and I want to stay in Lebanon. And that kind of put a wrench in the whole machine, because if you're not ready to relocate, you're not going to get the investment, and Lebanon didn't have any investors at the time. I don't think the Arab world had any investors. And therefore, within a couple of years, the company had to shut down because it wasn't able to raise enough money to continue growing. That was interesting. It was a learning experience. But from it, I met a friend who was helping me with this company, and who approached me and said, Samir, now that I've moved on, I want to create a conference in Lebanon for the Arab world. And I want this conference to be a tech conference, a digital conference, so that Arabs can feel like they are in the internet age. We're talking 2010. It's pretty sad that the internet age for us is 2010. And I want to create this conference, and I need you to help me reach an Arab audience. And back then, amongst Arabs, there's this thing called Árabe, which is this common identity, which to a certain extent doesn't exist. I mean, we speak the same language, but we don't. We have the same beliefs, but we don't. We share the same religion, but we don't. I mean, really, there's very little holding us together. So to create a digital conference where people actually see a coherence to the Arab world was going to be a challenge. So I got up and I'm like, okay, I'm going to create a community from this. And we reached out to, I think, 12 different Arab countries and successfully created micro-communities in those countries, which eventually sent attendees to our conference. We were able to get 600 attendees from, I think, 15 to 17 countries. I'm not sure the exact number. And a lot of them were paying attendees, so it was pretty impressive. But what that taught me, because I didn't know going in if it was possible, what that taught me was that there is such a thing as an Arab digital ecosystem. And there is such a thing as digital ecosystems in each of these Arab countries. And from there, I realized, okay, maybe we can do something in Lebanon, specifically for Lebanon, that would create a startup ecosystem, a place where startups can come together and grow and not feel alienated like I was in 2007. And so I created a startup accelerator, and this accelerator's purpose was to create a very Silicon Valley style environment in Beirut. So you could be in Silicon Valley from Beirut. And that experience was interesting because I opened the shop and build it and they will come. Nobody came. So it was interesting. So I found myself calling people that I knew around the world and seeing if they were interested in relocating to Lebanon. So I found someone in Egypt, I found someone in Abu Dhabi, and I found someone in Chile. And they all flew into Lebanon with their entire teams and set up shop in my accelerator. What that proved to me was that maybe Lebanon could be a startup destination. Meanwhile, just one startup came up to us and said, can you help us grow in Lebanon? That startup's name was Cinemos. And we basically sat with them, built their team, secured $200,000 in financing for them, and they were the first startup to ever be accelerated in Lebanon. Today, they are a multi-million-dollar startup that just secured a $1.5 million investment as a Series A round. So they are still doing very well. At that point, we realized, okay, we were able to attract startups, we were able to create startups, but we need to do something that is more mass-produced. If you can't scale, you're not going to have any impact. This is a very capitalistic approach. If you create one or two or three, you're not going to have a global impact, you're not going to have a significant impact. So we decided to create what is called the Sequence Accelerator program, which is not just acceleration, but a structured 6-month acceleration program that people apply to, they get selected, and then we invest in each one $75,000 and hold their hand for 6 months while we run together. And what was interesting about that was we invited the whole ecosystem, sat them down in a room like this and told them, we're going to find 300 entrepreneurs, we're going to select 30, and we're going to invest in 8 companies that these 30 form. And every single person laughed at us because it wasn't feasible in terms of time, it wasn't feasible financially, and it just hadn't been done before. 6 months after that presentation, we had 436 applications from 30 different countries. We selected 32 entrepreneurs. They formed 8 teams, and we invested $75,000 in each of these 8 teams. And everything was looking amazing. We had this chief content officer of Netflix, who some of you may know, Skype into our accelerator to talk and mentor these young entrepreneurs from the Valley to Beirut. We had the director of Google X, the guy who's doing the Google car now and those blimps that provide free internet, call in via Skype and basically share his insights and mentor our startups. We were, all of a sudden, Beirut was now part of the Valley. And everything was amazing. And this is where I can create an intersection between the Arab Spring and my story. At that point in time, Syria decided to go full-blown civil war. And Syria, as you may know, is a very big brother of Lebanon. So once the civil war got completely out of hand in Syria, it spilled over into Lebanon, and within a month of starting the Accelerator program, we had, I think, maybe 2-3 major car bombings. One killed 25 people, another maybe 10, so on and so forth. And every month, we had new surprises, and it became, the idea of a startup is that it's a high-risk venture. If you take a high-risk venture and put it in a high-risk environment, you're talking about levels of risk that are simply impossible to measure or maintain or mitigate. And just as we were reaching the peak of our success, the country lost all confidence with investors, with entrepreneurs, with anything. We lost 2 of the investors that we had gotten on board. The teams started feeling like they were under a lot of stress because not only did they have to produce, but they had to produce an environment that was physically not safe. And so we hit rock bottom. The program basically was falling apart. And we did everything we could. We sacrificed money from our pockets, all of our time. We were spending 20 hours a day just to make sure that these 8 companies we created could make it through those 6 months. And that, I believe, is the starting point of how we became part of this revolution. Because the struggle we had in this was very powerful because it brought the teams together in a way that without the struggle, we would not have been able to bring them together. It created these pockets of very intelligent, driven people that were in an environment that was facing massive upheaval, focused on a global market and succeeding in a global marketplace. It was extraordinary what we could achieve. 6 months were completed. Of the 8, 7 made it through. Of the 7 that pitched at our demo day, 6 were invited by the Central Bank of Lebanon to pitch to the governor of the central bank. And I don't know what you know about Lebanese politics, but I think the only politician in Lebanon that has made it so far as able to move the country forward has been the governor of the central bank. So once, at that point, we had hit rock bottom. The accelerator was shutting down. They were pitching to the governor, and the governor sat through an hour and a half of startup pitches. I don't know what you know about an hour and a half of pitching, but it can be really boring and can be very tedious, especially for someone who's not in the startup world. At the end of the hour and a half, he looked at us and said, "I'm going to invest in all of you." To which I thought, this is his way of basically telling us he's not going to invest in anyone. So we left that session feeling somewhat depressed. 2 weeks later, the governor gets in touch with us and says, "Guys, I'm not going to be able to invest in you, but I think I've done something a little better. The central bank is going to create Lebanon's first sovereign fund for equity investments in startups, worth $500 million. Overnight, what was a crisis for Sequence and a crisis for the country became an opportunity for the country because it was now a cash-rich startup destination. $500 million is a lot of millions of dollars for Lebanon and even for the Arab world. From those 500 million, the first investment went into one of our startups, and things were back on a roll. Now that we were cash rich, and this brings us to this conference story, the central bank said, "We have too much money for Lebanon. Can we turn Lebanon into an international destination?" And this was happening just as the Syrian civil war was starting to kind of quiet down in Lebanon. We have 2 million Syrian refugees in Lebanon, but the governor of the central bank felt that just because our population was 50% now refugee, there was no reason to believe that we could not have an international focused conference that would give an international image to Lebanon as a destination. So I was asked to organize a conference that would attract 50 speakers from around the world. We had speakers from Tokyo, Seoul, Singapore, Malaysia, all the way to South Africa, San Francisco, Austin, New York, all of Europe. We had only 10 Lebanese on stage of the 53 speakers. Only 10 Lebanese and only one non-Lebanese Arab, an Egyptian man. And this has nothing to do with being Arab or non-Arab. We wanted to create a global conference. And the Arab world only represents a very small fraction of the world. 1,600 people attended this conference. 53 speakers were flown in. It was a massive success. And the entire world noted that Lebanon had joined the International Startup Ecosystems Hub. Just as that happened, the year turned 2015. Lebanon was on the verge of more growth, $500 million, International Startup Hub, and the pieces were coming together. And this picture you see here is actually quite interesting because this is the first cluster to be organically formed in Lebanon. Nobody forced these people to get together in a building. And in this cluster, in this building, physical building, there are investors, there are media entities, there are startups, there are startup support institutions. All of them clustered together to create the first cluster in Lebanon of independent entities working together to create a real ecosystem. So what does this all mean? A lot of you may know this guy, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs had this approach to things that many of us relate to, which is gut. In 2007, I lost a lot of money, a lot of time, and basically failed my first company. In 2009, I failed my second company. In 2010, I created a conference, wasn't particularly interested in pursuing that, moved on to another thing. Then I created an accelerator program, that failed as well. And in all this journey, I could have very easily gotten up and gone to the US. I'm a US citizen, I can move to wherever I want to go. But I decided to stay. And today I look back at it, and in hindsight, it all makes sense. You can't connect the dots looking forward, but in hindsight, you can always connect them. It just comes together. And what's beautiful about that is to get through all of this uncertainty moving forward, you just have to believe in that gut. And that's what I believe a lot of what is the driver of the Arab Spring. Not the Arab Spring that was mobilized by foreign entities and you know, unknown hands. The Arab Spring that started the revolution in Tunis. The Arab Spring that is continuing to affect change comes from the gut. Because looking forward, nothing is clear. But looking backwards, it all makes sense. And that's my story.
Thank you very much, Samir. It's a very inspiring story. We will go back to it in the questions and answers. Now we turn towards the Tunisian case. We have here Youssef Fennira. Youssef Fennira works as project manager at the German Tunisia Chamber of Industry and Commerce. He obtained a diploma in international trade at the Université La Sorbonne, Paris, as well as the MBA in International Business Engineering at Paris Graduate School of Management. For more than 3 years, he has been working on the question of employment in Tunisia, and now has become the project director of a pilot project with the objective to create the first private job center in Tunisia. He's founder of CreaGens in 2013, a research center for youth employability and supervision that aims at identifying the cause behind youth unemployment and determining appropriate solutions in order to raise their employability. So you're waiting for the, do you have
presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be up in a minute.
Okay,
So we wait for a minute and we will
no, it's not.
listen to your case.
No, because that's not outputting up there.
No, she has to do it.
Oh, she has to do it from there.
The technical.
I can begin by
Okay.
by saying sorry to all who loves Shakespeare, because my English today won't be the same English than summer, because as you know in Tunisia we speak French particularly more than English, but I'm going to do my best. So I want to thank the Friedrich Herbert Stiftung and Casa Árabe to their kind invitation. So as you all know, we have achieved in a way the political transition, and Ziad had explained it in a very, very well way. And during this political transition, we have lost many times in terms of economy. Now we have to begin the economic transition in Tunisia. And I will give you today some general observation about which are very important about the situation of economy in Tunisia and the situation of employment. And after, I'm going to try to be more specific and by showing you the solution we are now working on in consultation with the public sector to find solutions for the problem of employment in Tunisia. As you said, Karim, you were talking about Tunisian fighters who have joined ISIS in Iraq. This is one of the consequences of the economic situation in Tunisia, particularly. So if we improve our economy, if you find solution for that problem, we won't have the same number of Tunisians which go there. So, yeah, we can start by this. Thank you. I don't have here.
I don't know why.
Okay. I'm going to try. So, let's begin by the observations, the main observations on the labor market in Tunisia. The first observation is that one of the main problems on the Tunisian labor market is the gap between high education programs and the needs expressed by the private sector. In fact, until now, the education system is not hearing the private sector and is giving programs which were useful 10 years ago. This is a big problem now in Tunisia. The second observation is that when you're a young man or woman, you got your diploma and you come to the labor market. Except the public employment center, you have no one to help you. So we have to develop a kind of new job, to create a new job, which is an employment officer, which does not exist in Tunisia, except in the public sector. But the problem is that in the public sector now in Tunisia, we have 2,000 employment officers for 700,000 unemployment job seekers. So it's a big problem because now they are trained to help these people, but they don't have enough time, so they have to just be stopped to the bureaucratic function, which is what's your name, what's your ID, so that's a big problem because they can't help these people. Same thing for the companies. In Tunisia, we have the majority of companies, like all the country, are small companies, and most of the time they don't know their needs, and they want help to identify their needs and to find the best candidates for the good job. So this is a big problem in Tunisia, and they don't find anyone to help them. So this is the second observation. The problem. Okay. So the third observation is that in Tunisia, as you know, we have a French legacy. As you can see from my accent, your job is automatically linked to your diploma, which does not allow you to improve your chances to find a job. This is a French legacy, because in France, when we have this kind of diploma, we have to do a job which is straightly related to the diploma. What is the consequence? The consequence is, as I said before, we have a lot of qualifications which are saturated now in Tunisia. So if you do not have the reflex to change your point of view or to change your skills, you will not be able to find a job. Next observation, and last observation we did, we went across all the region of Tunisia, of the country, and the main message of the company was the employees have a serious problem, a lack in terms of what we call soft skills, which is the behavior inside of the company. And this problem is like the punctuality, like all the things which are related to the behavior. That's why we have to take into consideration the necessity to offer soft skills training for a maximum of job seekers before they enter to a company. Okay, so with all of that, we had the idea of creating a new notion, which exists in Germany, which is working in Germany, but which does not exist in Tunisia, which is the reorientation, the reconversion, we say that. As you can see, some of the observation can be applied to Spain or to France, because the problem is Tunisia is in a way a problem of developed countries. But the problem is that in Tunisia, we don't have enough means today to quickly answer to these needs, and the population now want some solutions and that is a big problem. So according to this observation, we developed the idea of creating a new kind of job center, which does not exist in Tunisia. The first center for career, counseling, and professional reorientation. The specificity, the innovation of this center, as I said now, is this notion of reorientation. So let me show you some numbers to know, to understand why we thought to this notion of reorientation. And okay, so as you can see, we have made as AHK, so German-Tunisian Chamber of Industry and Trade, a study across all Tunisia to identify which were the main saturated qualifications in the country. So we observed that the main fields were finance, accounting, commerce, economy, IT management, electrical engineer, science in general, biology, chemistry, physics, languages, law, history, and geography. We also had a look, analyzed the public sector studies, because we wanted to compare if our studies were on the good way. And we observed that the results were almost the same, with practically the same numbers and the same results. So that was very good for us to see that. Then we took a look on the other side, the company side, and trying to know which sectors did not manage to find the good candidate for their vacancies. So on this side, we observed that the main demanding sectors were manufacturing industries, trade, commerce, construction, textile, and tourism, which are the main sectors in Tunisia now. Then, more specifically, we took a look to the jobs, and then we saw that these jobs are very, very demanded in Tunisia. But what is the problem? Before telling you what are the jobs, the real problem is that when we look on the high education system in Tunisia, we observe that for all the jobs that I will now, I'm going to say now, for all these jobs, we don't have any diploma in Tunisia. So that's a big problem, because the companies want to hire people for these jobs, but they don't find anyone. So these jobs are purchaser, sales force, quality manager, logistician, and other job like designer, like ticket agent, and all this stuff. And we don't have any training for these jobs, which is a very big problem. Now, I want to just talk about the key of the success. The key of the success is the employment officers we are now training. Since 2 months, we made a very, very tough selection, which we had about 300 CVs and in 10 days. And we choose after a selection of 5 steps, looking at how Google did for its selections. And we now have 15 employment officers. These officers, we went to Germany to see how job centers in Germany are working, how the employment officers in Germany are working, what are the programs there, and we brought the programs in Tunisia, and we went in Egypt too, which they made the same experience in Cairo with the GIZ there, which is the German corporation in Egypt, and we spent a week to see the results. And in Egypt, the result is great. The only difference between Egypt and Tunisia is that in Tunisia we are working on diploma, on job seekers who have diploma. And in Egypt, they are working on job seeker who don't have diploma. So that's the only difference. But in the deep, for the situation, all is the same. So we saw that in Egypt, they have one job center. They had one job center in 2011, and now in 2014, they have 5 job centers. They had 3 employment officers, and now they have 40 employment facilitators. So it's a big success there. So we went there to see the Egyptian experience, and it was very, very helpful for us now to develop this center here in Tunisia. So as I said, we choose the 15 employment officers, and now they're having a training. What is the kind of training? It's a training of 47 days, and they are now studying law, so to know how do you do a contract, how can you help a job seeker to not be undermined by a company, and in the same time to help companies to know what kind of contract they could make. So the second part is the soft skills part. So they are trained to to know how to train, all this kind of empathy you have to develop with a job seeker, and how to, in another side, help the company to identify their needs, etc., etc. They are also trained to make auto-coaching, to know how they organize themselves, etc., etc. We are also now developing a new program for the public sector, because one of the main things we want to do is not to be in competition with the public sector, but to help the private sector to come with us. So we just want to help the public sector and to give him all information we have to help him to improve itself. So we want, and I hope that next month or next 2 months, we will train 20 or 25 public sector employment officers on our program, and that will be maybe the first step to train all the 2,000 officers according to our program, which is for us the main objective of this social project. So, last thing, I just want to show you the process. When you come to this center and you meet an employment officer, what is the job of the employment officer, and what do we offer to the companies, and what do we offer to the job seekers? So, first thing, for the companies, we help the company to identify its needs. And then we collect all the job description. We have an interview with the HR manager of the company. And then we give him a short list. For one job, we give 5 resumes. So we help the company to not lose time searching resumes in 300 or 500 resumes. We just give 5 resumes for one job. And then, and that is one of the particularity of this center, when a company chooses to have an interview with the job seeker, automatically the job seeker will have freely soft skills training before going to the interview, which is new and does not exist in Tunisia. So after this soft skills training, there's the interview between the job seeker and the HR manager, and then the feedback with the HR manager and the employment officer. And as you can see, the employment officer is here from the beginning to the end of the process to accompany both. And the objective for us at the end is that the job seeker will be hired by the company. On the job seeker side, you send the resume on the website, and then you take an appointment with the employment officer. Then you have an interview with the employment officer, and automatically, as I said, you have a skills assessment. It's free. Everything is free for the job seeker. You have a skills assessment. Then after, we look to the matching. If we find a job, it's perfect for us, so we propose an interview with the company. In case of not finding a job, we will propose to the job seeker a reconversion, a reorientation to one of these new jobs I said before. So if he accepts, he will have a reconversion training, and then he will have the interview, a soft skills training also, and we go back to the company side, the interview with the HR manager, and then, as I said before, maybe he will be hired by the company. That's our objectives. I just wanted to present you today something very specific we are doing in Tunisia, because I think that it can be more interesting to see how we act really concretely. This job center will open on the 4th of May 2015. Last week we had the big ceremony of launching of the launching of the project with the Ministry of Employment, and I wanted to just say that, which is very, very nice, is that there's there's a good relation in Tunisia between the public and the private sector in terms of employment, which is very, very important, because we have, as private sector, we have to help the public sector, and the public sector want to learn about the private sector. So that's very, very interesting for us. I hope that you had heard something very interesting about the Tunisian case. Thank you.
Thank you, Youssef.
And sorry again.
Went to the heart of the matter and the question of employment for young professionals in Tunisia. Now we are going to turn into the Moroccan case and the case of microfinancing by Adil Sadoq. Adil Sadoq is a seasoned microfinance practitioner who rose through the ranks of Sakura, a microfinance institution in Morocco, which tops in the MIX Global 100 list. You will have to explain us what that means. Since 2002, he has been sharing his expertise as a consultant with a range of microfinance institutions, donor and microfinance network organizations through Africa and the Middle East. Adil Sadoq has also significant experience as a team leader designing and launching microfinance programs, including developing the branch network, designing and pilot testing new products, and helping with human resources, I guess, strategy development and performance indicators monitoring. Sadoq is a solid trainer who has provided also training in numerous microfinance training modules and is certified in social management and social audit for microfinance institutions. So please, Sadoq, when you want.
Thank you very much. So my name is Adil Sadoq, and today I'm going to be talking about an industry that I think is still not known a lot in the world, which is microfinance. I'm going to do a small introduction about microfinance, and then I will talk about microfinance prior to the Arab Spring, and then what happened after. Microfinance came as an answer to all the failures of the banking sector. It started in 1970s, and it came because the banking sector was not able to serve the poor, was not able to serve women, was not able to serve youth. And when it started, we were thinking that it will be the answer to access to finance to all those categories. In the Arab region, it started early 1990s. The Arab region, we were thinking it's the best place to have microfinance institutions. Because if we look to the traditional financial system, we are really, really behind in all the indicators. You know that 13% of the Moroccans have a formal access to financial products, only 13%. If we go to Yemen, it's just 1% of the population. So microfinance can be this solution that will allow young people, women, rural, access and finance in a decent way. And also because this population is active, this population is economically active and need financial services like any other person. So having access to financial products was really critical. Also, the difference with the banking system is that microfinance industry is here to serve the poorest, is here to serve people who are starting very, very small businesses. And it's impossible for them to have access to the banking system. I don't know. I know in the Arab countries, I visited all of them. One of the features of my project is helping youth open a saving account. And when I do presentations in North America, in Canada and US specifically, and a little bit in Europe, when I tell people that we are helping youth opening a saving account, they all think, so why they don't just open their own saving account? Why do they need you to help them open a saving account? Because in the Arab world, it's impossible almost to open a saving account, to open a bank account, because the minimum deposit is $100, for example, in the Moroccan banks. The youth we work with will never have $100 at one time, so they can put it in a bank and save it. So immediately they find themselves out. Banks are all built with marble and very fancy entrance. Poor people are really not even welcomed in those banks. So we had to help them if we want them to open a saving account. As I said, they are the poorest in the society. We work with the poorest. You know that 20% of the population in the Arab world live with less than $2 a day. And this is the population we are working with as microfinance industry. Of course, the situation of women and youth is even worse. If you add women, youth, rural, you will find crazy numbers. So what did we achieve as an industry in the Arab world, in the MENA region? That's before the Arab Spring. There were more or less 200 microfinance institutions. And the microfinance institutions, when we say this word, they are not banks, and they are not financial institutions. 99% of them are NGOs. They are NGOs that want to offer this service, which is access to finance. We had maybe 200 or a little more, and 85 of them are really well developed. And you were talking about Zakura, that the NGO I created in 1995, it's ranked one of the best institutions in the world in 2009. There are a lot of success. The outreach of this microfinance institution before the Arab Spring was 4.6 million loans, active loans. If one family is on average five members, we are here talking about 30 million people that are served by these institutions. The gross loan portfolio was $2.5 billion. The average loan, and this is very important to know that in Egypt, the loan starts as 500 Egyptian pound, which is $80. The average loan is around $600. And those young people that take loans, or women, they start always by a small loan, and it's what we call the educational loan. We help them learn how to use money. We help them learn how to invest in small projects. The success of the microfinance industry in the Arab world before the Arab Spring was, we see it in the number of people who have got these loans, but also we see it in how well managed those financial institutions and how well the loans were taken. You know, something that when we started in '95, talking about giving loans to poor people, people who used to laugh to me. My father tried really hard to understand what I am doing. I used to tell him I give loans to people. He said, "You are a bank?" I said, "No." So who you are, so to give loan, to give money to people, you must be a bank. And it was really hard to explain to him that I am going to give loans to people who are poor, who have no guarantee, because everyone here who studies finance knows that a loan is a guarantee. People without guarantee, I am going to give them a loan. Everyone was telling me, this is just crazy, you're going to lose all the money, no one will repay you. After 10 years, the non-repayment rate of those financial institutions was less than 1%. Poor people are the best to repay any loan. You give them, they are the best to pay their taxes. Rich people don't pay taxes. Rich people don't repay the loan. They find ways not to do that. If you compare the 1% non-repayment rate that we had with the 8% that the banks, with all the system they have behind them, that shows you the quality of the portfolio and shows you the trust that we built on those people was paying off. We trust them. They don't have a guarantee. We give loan to a woman when we say projects, she needs to have a micro project. First, it was hard for us to define what is a project. When we went to books and we were looking, it needs to be formal, it needs to be under this minister and this minister. It was not working. We are helping women that work from home, that have a small projects, that her main objective is to help her family. And those were really, really good clients for those institutions. So it was very successful as an industry, and it started to grow. Microfinance institutions in Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, Tunisia, Yemen were very, very successful. Other rich countries didn't have microfinance. Even the poor, you know, even in Morocco, we waited for so long for the government to recognize that we have poor people in Morocco, so we should have an answer to that. It's a long process. So other countries are still not there, so they don't see that they have poor people. They need access to finance also. And so it started, when it started, it was really a very big challenge. We were doing very good. As I said, we have different difficulties. One is access to finance. The second is, you know, all those MENA region are Muslim countries as well. And we lend money with an interest rate. And immediately all the religious people who talk about religion a lot were like, no, you cannot give loans with an interest rate. And I remember I was a loan officer in '95, and it's just like a joke. And you know, we work in rural areas, and they went to a village to talk to women about giving them a loan. And you know, in Morocco, there is always a mosque in every village, and near the mosque there is a little place. It's usually the place where they gather when they have a party or whatever. So all the women were there in that place, and I was sitting on the stairs that lead to the mosque. I was standing up there so I can talk to them so they can hear me. So I was explaining to them about the loan, and all of a sudden the door behind me opened, and the guy with the big beard came and said, no, this guy is kafir, don't listen to him, all that. And I was shocked. All what I did is, I said, okay, so I had a little suitcase, I took it, and they said, I asked them, do you need a loan? They said, yes. I said, give them a loan. I told the guy, give them a loan, I'm leaving. And all the women were there, no, 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 no. We are taking your loan, we need it, and you guy, don't talk about it. What we faced as institutions, it's not just accessing money and managing and training and making sure those people will be successful, but also where we are operating, the society where we are operating was not very, very easy. So till 2011, it was very successful, and I can say. What happened after is that we had a lot of problems after the Arab Spring. And this is, in all the media, they don't talk about this. The people the most that are hit by the Arab Spring or whatever happening are the poor people, not the rich. Rich, they have a lot of money. If they cannot invest today, they can wait. They have their own money, they can wait and invest later. But poor people, If the construction, like what happened in Egypt, we don't build anything new. All the people working on construction they can't find a job, and so on. All the poor people were really badly hit. And when they were badly hit, we were badly hit. They were not able to repay us. They were not able to repay the loans they took from financial institutions. There was no activities, and I remember they were telling me, yes, once things change, we will repay you. But today, we are not working, we are not producing. We cannot repay you. That's the major thing. So we went from a non-repayment rate of less than 1% to a non-repayment rate. In some cases, Lebanon was really bad experience after the Israeli attack in 2006. So we learned a little bit. We went from 1% to 13, 14%. And with such a percentage, microfinance institutions cannot survive. It's a mechanism. We need a good quality portfolio to be able to survive. Was one of the biggest hits. Yes, the fact that we were NGOs helped us a little bit because we are not tied with the government. So our relation with with our clients remains really good, but in terms of repayment, it was very bad. We had no contingency plan. As microfinance institutions, we were not ready for anything. As I said, we saw something happening in Lebanon. We saw like when there is an earthquake or whatever, we had to prepare for a contingency plan. But that, it's small compared to what hit us in 2011, where Egypt stopped, Morocco, even with, there was not like a big revolution, but also it was really badly hit. What we saw after that is that our clients are poorer. Definitely they have less money, they have less assets, and they have less income. They lost their assets and the income was lost. Also, what we saw is that new poor came to the market. We were used to see women what we call the women-headed households. That's were the most poorer in villages or in peri-urban setting. But after the revolution, we saw other people that were really doing fine before becoming poor. Taxi drivers, we saw a lot of people who have small businesses, they became poor. And more women, more young people came to see us. Also, one of the things that hit us really badly is in Egypt, for example, when the government decided to postpone all the payments for what they call the Social Fund for Development, which is a government-owned institution that was given loans like we do. And they decided to postpone any payments for 3 months. So they can do that, but us as institutions, we cannot afford to have employees and to have all the activities stopping for 3 months. When the new government was formed in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood formed the new government, that was, again, for us, a source of instability because we didn't know what this new government will decide. We are NGOs operating in a very gray setting. You know that in most of the countries, in the Arab countries, you can work as an NGO, it's fine, but you have no legal documents. What they did, all the governments, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Jordan, Yemen, Sudan, everywhere. You can work as an NGO, but the government will never give you any legal documents to protect you. So the day they are tired of what you are doing, they can shut you down very easily. And we were really afraid with new governments coming in that we will lose all what we have, and we had to stop. The lack of funding, how do we get, as financial institutions, how we get our money, the money we are lending to poor people? At 75%, it's grants, donations coming from donors. The remaining 25% is investments. The most successful MFIs started now attracting investment, social investments. We started accessing this money and our own assets. With the revolutions that happened, the 75% stopped immediately. No grants coming. As you may know, the largest donors for our industry is USAID in US, the European Commission in Europe, and some big donors. They all stopped giving grants to microfinance institutions because there is no visibility. They had to wait to see what's going to happen. And we suffered a lot from this. Those are the main repercussions of the Arab Spring on this industry. But we are we think that a lot of good things are coming out of it. The positive things is we're going to be regulated. There is a big movement of advocacy right now happening in all the Arab countries. You know, the governments that they used not to care about youth at all in the past. When I started a program called Youth Invest in Morocco in 2006, if I go to any government employee and they say, I need help, they don't talk to me at all. After this revolution and they saw what youth can do, they all came to me to say, can you please come help us figure out what we can do with these young people. So we are confident that we will have a better regulation. We also hope that this revolution will bring democracy, and with it will bring new donors, new investors, people trusting on the future of those countries and ready to help them. As a conclusion, I loved Samir's story, but you know, I see hundreds of those stories every day. Not the same scale, not the same billions, not the same millions, but I see hundreds of men and women that fight every morning to put bread on the table. And at the end of the day, they are very, very happy. They achieved something. You know, when I see a woman fighting to send the kids to school, which is something really, really normal for other households, for her, it's the biggest success. So this success, I hope we can keep helping them. I hope this industry will remain offering those services to the poorest, because with Arab Spring or not, they are the forgotten group in our politics. Thank you.